the PMO and FedRAMP overall is embracing obviously the idea of accelerating with FedRAMP 20X. So as someone who's been in it since the beginning and seen kind of the evolutions and the changes, I think we've talked a few times on a few episodes now what's been proposed, but what do you see, like if you were gonna, take a look into the future, what do you see, what do you see FedRAMP looking like in a year, 2 years, 5 years? What do you think actually changes and what do you think doesn't?
Can I answer that two ways? I'm going to answer with what I see and what I'd like to see. So, and then what I think will happen, right? Um, so I think Pete is headed in the absolute right direction. He's got a very good vision. I think that the administration is behind him with the leadership of the GSA. In that obviously, we're all aware of the backlog and the fact that the backlog has been tremendously remediated in a logical fashion. And there's many of us who, as either previous advisors or current 3POs, who are kind of like, we are very excited about it. We would love to have seen this sooner, but we also know that that was a little bit out of everyone's control, so to speak. I think it took this administration to make something like that happen. So what do I see coming down the road? I see a future where low and moderates don't require sponsorship, potentially operate in the way that state ramp, gov ramp is operating today, right? Where you can go through the process without a sponsor. And essentially that first agency kind of becomes your adjunct sponsor, so to speak. But I also see the potential for agencies to do things differently, like what goes on with FSMA. So not every agency handles FSMA the same way, or even RMF. The beauty of FedRAMP is that you know what you're getting because everybody's doing it the same way, right? And the expectations, and the PMO regulated that and ensured it. I think that they will get where they want to go in terms of making this the responsibility of the agencies to take care of it all. But I also think you're going to end up potentially with having to take a package to every agency because the next one may not do it the same.
Yeah.
Or focus on the same controls or have the same concerns.
That is a fear we hear from a lot of our clients that work with multiple agencies is they're like, it feels like they're saying for them, it feels like a step backwards almost in that regard because FedRAMP was created to say, oh, do it once, everyone will use it. We had one client that was like, so wait, you're telling me I have to have 14 SSPs and do 14 separate POA&M things to make sure every agency's okay with it? And it's like, well,
that's
maybe
where the
not.
do once,
That's
like the original mantra was do once, use many times.
Right.
And I think what I think was beautiful about FedRAMP, and it's still beautiful today because it's happening today, is its ability to evolve and adapt, right? Where FSMA, and even it's an act of Congress basically, right? So, in O2 when FSMA came out, it was to overcome the fact of, like, you remember the periods where Congress and everybody was testifying for a $400 hammer and a $200 toilet seat, and what are we buying? And it was the same thing with computers, right? They didn't know what they were buying, but they were spending millions of dollars on devices that they had no idea what the security was. So then here comes FSMA. Well, then it was that 1 day a year snapshot where people basically, organizations were lax in security, and they're like, oh, the annual's coming up. Oh, let's run that scan. And then we'll remediate it. And it's like, what did you do for the last 11 months, right? That is a great example of the potential of where we could be going, right? Is the concern around folks potentially cutting corners or only dealing with controls or only doing what they need to at that moment because they know that that agency only cares about this, or that that's all that's going to be looked at instead of the full 100%, 323 controls or 410 and high, whatever the baseline is. I think the future of Conmon is where I have the most, highest expectations and hope. I'm not worried about systems being audited. I think all that'll get streamlined and get where it needs to be. I think that's going to be one of the biggest benefits we get out of this is faster adoption, faster to ATO, faster audits. Okay. Conmon is where the real work is, and that is where the potential for breaches and spillages and things like that occur. So let's put assessment and authorization aside and talk about security operations and maintaining. there's a lot of talk about the POAMs and reading through an Excel sheet and going through all these. That's critical. Like, that's critical. I know everybody hates it, but you guys have a solution. There's lots of solutions and ways to handle that more efficiently. But I can tell you, like you said, having to deal with 14 potential different POAMs or present the package to 14 different agencies differently, yeah, that's a nightmare situation.